Good evening, Shortcuts. Stephen here. This is a classic rock, pop, and blues list. A little bit of soul as well. And this is going to go out on a price list on Wednesday. What is it going to be? Wednesday, the 16th of August at 9 p.m. as always. Thank you all for the amazing emails and participation in the club over the last little while. It's really inspired me to keep this going. So thank you. Now, I've got some records this evening that I'm really excited about in the classic rock list. Normally, I record the jazz and blues and soul first. I've got a pretty much exclusively jazz selection to come. But I'm going to start with the classic rock. I've got, actually, I'm not sure whether The Wall is 70s or 80s now to think about, whether it's 79 or 80. I'll check in a second. But I've got one. I'm going to start off with, I've got The Wall here, one of my all-time favorite Japanese pressings, but it's not the one I'm going to start with. I'm going to start with this. I'm going to take it out of the sleeve. So this record is on the Vertigo label. And it's a little bit later in the 60s, so it's the 70s, so it's the Spaceship Vertigo label. This band began in Greece in late 60s, mid to late 60s, 67, I think, 68. And they released a couple of records. Pop records, predominantly pop records, and had some really big hits. It's 5 o'clock, probably being the biggest. They sold millions of records in Europe. Millions. I saw somewhere recently that it was upwards of 20 million records. The lead singer, Demis Roussos, left this band and had a solo career, and the keyboardist and flautist in the band, Vangelis, went on to have an extraordinary career as soundtrack writer to the likes of Blade Runner, amongst many other things. But this is where they began. And this is the Greek prog rock band Aphrodite's Child. And this is their third and final album, 666. It is an amazing album. Hard cardboard gatefold, full treatment, really, really nice condition. Why is this record so incredible? Well, I think Vangelis and the guitarist, whose name escapes me, were the original band members. They decided that this record would be a concept record that effectively told the story of the Book of Revelations. 666, as Iron Maiden said, the number of the beast. And so this record traces out this, biblical allegory with all sorts of weird, wonderful songs. The Lamb, the Seventh Seal, the Awakening Beast, the Battle of the Locusts, 7 Trumpets, Altamont. Now, Altamont is an interesting song because I'm a big fan of a record called Urban Hymns by a band called The Verve. And there's a song on there called The Rolling People, which is one of my favorite songs on that record, that references Altamont, both in terms of the name, but also the style of the song, the capture of the beast, and all the seats were occupied. But I've deliberately left off the killer song and I mean killer song from this record, which is called The Four Horsemen. Now, The Four Horsemen begins with Lucas Sideras was the drummer and vocalist, but he did all sorts of stuff. The Four Horsemen begins with this tinkling Vangelis kind of keyboard sound, and you will recognize, if you followed his career, that glacial tinkling signature motif of his. You'll recognize it at the beginning of this song. And then Demis Roussos comes in his kind of almost soprano range, very high voice, and he starts singing this song effectively about the four horsemen of the apocalypse. One is red, one is green, one is black, etc. And that's fine. It's dramatic and big and just a rambunctious song, but then all of a sudden it breaks out into this guitar solo. I'm trying to think who would be playing that guitar. Silver Caloris is his name. Silver Caloris. And he breaks out a guitar solo that is mind-blowing. And it goes and goes and goes. It is like a mixture of Jimi Hendrix and Eddie Van Halen. It pans from side to side. It is an amazing song, and one that I was not aware of until one night I was with my good friend Charlie, and he said, "I've got something you need to hear," and I cannot believe how amazing that song is. And it is such a fun, silly, bonkers, great double album. Oh man, that sleeve with the 666, everything about it's fantastic. And you know what? It knocked this classic double album into a tin hat for me. I kind of like The Wall. This is the Japanese first press with inserts, and it's got the sticker, because some of the Japanese first presses just had The Wall. It's got all of the inserts and everything all present and correct. Now, if you go to the Discogs page for this pressing and look at the comments, you will see that people rave about it. Now, part of the reason they rave about this record is I've had a few copies of The Wall over the years because it's a record I've really tried to love, and I just really struggle. Of course, it's got some incredible highlights, Mother and Comfort Me Numb, etc. But it's as a concept, I find Roger Waters to be kind of irritating to the point of just complete unction. I just can't deal with him. It's hard to explain. I think it's a mixture of the voice and the angst. It just doesn't work for me. When David Gilmour gets involved, I'm in love. But I've had a few pressings over the years, and this is the warmest, most inviting vinyl copy of a record that I find alienating and distant. And so I have this copy on my shelf, and every so often I will pull it out and play it, even though I find it a challenge, because I know that there's some extraordinary quality there. So for those of you who love this record, that Japanese first press is bonkers good. I can't even describe. It's wonderfully warm and analog and gluey, and yeah, it really works. And I mean, Pink Floyd make extraordinary music. That's the case. But yeah, I highly recommend it. Some of these to come, man. Honestly. So this record is... I've been waiting for this to come along for ages, and two came along at once, which I'm absolutely stunningly happy with. Bauhaus's Mask on the Bega label. Bauhaus being the progenitors of effectively goth, even though they didn't like the term goth. They prefer dark glam. I'm not sure about dark glam, but Mask is their second record, following the debut on A Flat Field. So you've got something that's icy and it's harsh, and of course it's uncompromising. But this record struck a nerve and started its own subgenre to the extent that it made the cut in Robert Demery's classic book, 1001 Records to Hear Before You Die. The only probably goth record. I haven't. I guess I don't know the book off by heart. Of course I don't. But there aren't many goth records in there. But Bauhaus's Mask made the cut. It is a record that requires volume. You have to boost it. You have to play it to an extent where those who don't like this type of music get grumpy with you, because it requires some heft. We've had a lot of heavy music. Now is for a few records that are a little bit different. I think this is Grace Jones's 4th or 5th record. It's hard to say what the best Grace Jones record is. Maybe it's Nightclubbing or Warm Leatherette. This record, I think, was her most commercially successful, predominantly because the single "Slave to the Rhythm" was a monster hit on both sides of the Atlantic, and I think probably in Australia as well. She'd been, she'd taken a break from music, and she'd taken a couple of acting roles. One being in A View to a Kill with Roger Moore in his kind of 80s Bond era. But the one that I remember as a kid growing up was in Conan the Barbarian with Arnold Schwarzenegger, where she was quite the presence. But this record was made with Trevor Horn, who'd just had monster records with the likes of Frankie Goes to Hollywood. And it is like a biography, an autobiography of Grace Jones. There are spoken word sections. She introduces some of the songs. It's decidedly odd in places, but then that suits her. But it's also really compelling and fun and rhythmic and danceable listen. Grace Jones, Slave to the Rhythm. You know what? I'm gonna put this one on next before we move on to some more blokey stuff. We'll stick with some of the fairer sex. This is Joni Mitchell's 5th record. This is For the Roses, a personal favourite of mine. Every time I see this record, I get it. I'm just going to show you a little bit of the hard cardboard inner. It's one of those Japanese pressings that has like a, can you see that? Like a insert? And look at that image. It's pretty special. I don't know whether that is a naked Joni Mitchell or a naked somebody else. But it's a beautiful thing. This record kind of snuggles in between probably her two most commercial records, Court and Spark, which is my favourite Joni Mitchell, and Blue, which is most people's favourite Joni Mitchell. But I would rank them like this. I think Court and Spark is her best. I think For the Roses is her second best. And I think Blue is her third best. And most people tend to reverse that, but I will stick up for the Roses. I love it. All right, I'm gonna take this one out next because I just want to show the poster. I've been snapping this up every time I see it. The P101A, Led Zeppelin 2. It just sounds great. And the folks in Shibuya are continually putting it in the box, which is good. Really good copies, amazing feedback, but this is a treat. The Led Zeppelin 2 poster. Now, the Led Zeppelin 2 poster, I think, is the most dramatic of the Japanese Led Zeppelin posters. I love that. It's mostly black, other than the bold text, but the band is in that kind of Atlantic green, but only in this interesting kind of almost psychedelic silhouette. It's a fantastic poster. For sheer pleasure. I think probably their best record. For just sheer silly pleasure, I think this one, and that is a fantastic copy. some records I love still to come. Look at this. The name of this. This is Otis Rush's This One's a Good 'Un. You can see on the back here a little biography of the man. This one's a good one. Otis Rush. Two memories, pins and needles down my spine the first time I heard Double Trouble. The look of amazed excitement on the faces of John Mell inspired Aberystwyth students as they heard the original All Your Love. This is probably Otis Spann's greatest period, certainly as a songwriter. This is 1956 to 1958. This is all of his singles and all of his album tracks and B-sides compiled, and it is utterly brilliant. Now, this, I think, is in the argument for one of the best debut albums of all time. The B-52's debut album, Planet Claire, 52 Girls, Dance This Mess Around, Rock Lobster, being the 4 songs in side 1, are pretty perfect for a band that had a guitarist that had only 3 strings, had a bloke, Fred, who can't really sing, but had her, Kate, the secret weapon. Yeah, it's just a brilliant album. Now, there's been a bit of an 80s revival this last little while, and I had an 80s picture disc last week from Wham that I could, if I'd had 10 of them, they would all have gone. And it was only afterwards that I was speaking to someone in the club, and they said, it's probably to do with the documentary on Netflix, which I didn't even know existed. So I've grabbed a few more 80s little nuggets for you, and I just thought I'd grab this too. So this is the Japanese first press of Make It Big by Wham. I'm just going to show you the insert because it's very, very beautiful. Look at it. George and Andrew. Just a fun pop record, but the Japanese press is perfect, and this is a fabulous copy. How about this? Stevie Nicks' debut solo record, Belladonna. This is in Billboard magazine's top 200 albums of all time. Stop Dragging My Heart Around with Tom Petty and The Edge of 17, which is the kickoff track of side 2. Is there a better kickoff side for side 2? I think it's in the argument. Of course, side 2 also includes Leather and Lace, which is rather great. Look at that. The beauty of these Japanese proper hard cardboard, or in this case just reinforced cardboard sleeves, is that these beautiful sleeves are maintained. No ring wear, only minimal corner wear. It's just wonderful. And of course, the vinyl is fantastic. It just makes for a great package. What a record. Final 2. This is the soundtrack to Rocky 3. Yes, the one with Eye of the Tiger. And Pushing by Frank Stallone. Oh, man. This is... I remember going to see Rocky 3 in the cinema. It was one of my earliest... what age would I have been? 1983? 9 or 10? 1982? 8? Oh, man. And being absolutely scared stiff of Mr. T. Even though I watched the A-Team. The A-Team was on a Saturday evening. It was, I don't know, I can't remember, 5:30, 6 o'clock. But it was like a family appointment. All of us would sit down and watch the A-Team together with Mr. T as B.A. Baracus. Anyway, Rocky 3. And then finally, I don't know if there was a better pop album in the 80s than this. And repeat myself, I love the obies that are integrated into the sleeves. They're just my favorite. This is Private Eyes by Daryl Hall and John Oates. I mean, they started out as pretty much a prog rock band, which is pretty weird. But then they became an absolute juggernaut. Head Above Water, Unguarded Minute, Your Imagination, Private Eyes, of course. I can't go for that. Mano a Mano. It's amazing stuff. They had a run of pop records that are pretty much second to none. And again, I'll put those Japanese presses against any. Wonderful stuff. So there you have it. Classic rock, a little snippet of blues, a little bit of soundtrack, certainly some pop, and Aphrodite's Child. Okay, well, video 1 down, some jazz to come. Hope you enjoyed that. Something for you to peruse. Although you can't get your Joni Mitchell on Spotify, of course. Anyway, thank you so much for watching, as always, and on to video 2.